Hey guys, so in this video we're going to review some graphs of some basic functions that you've probably learned in the past. And yeah, this is really just like a quick review kind of intended for pre-calc students or above. Okay, so a lot of people hate graphing, and actually I don't think graphing is too bad, but I hated it too when I was a student. And I think the problem was I didn't know like what the key was, okay? So the key to graphing these functions is to learning a few key points. So I'm going to show you what that is. And the idea of like having key points, it's a little bit subjective, but it's more like you have a base graph, and this is a method to help you remember that. And if you do this for when you learn other base graphs, and then you just kind of like learn to think of the graph in that context, it makes graphing so simple. It makes graphing really not suck. Okay, so we're going to just jump right into a whole bunch of different types of graphs. So this first one, so f of x equals x. So this is really just the graph of a line, and the most basic graph of a line that you can get is just the function x. Now, in this case, I don't even know that we really need to like come up with a table here, but if you wanted to, I guess you could have like -1. So if I plug in -1, I get -1. If I plug in 0, I get 0. If I plug in 1, I get 1. Okay, but this is just a line. So I think like you guys kind of know this. So I could plot these 3 points. The other way I could go about this is I could say, okay, this is technically in mx plus b form, right, where b, the y-intercept is 0, and then I go up 1 over 1 for the m, right? So I could also think of it like that. Anyways, this is a line, so this is kind of a basic graph. I think most people usually aren't too worried about graphing the lines. But let's move now into where people get a little nervous. All right, so x squared. Okay, so this graph is a parabola. So you should know intuitively, this is your goal anyways, is to know that this has a U shape. And there are really 3 key points that you need to know for the U shape: -1, 0, and 1. So if I plug -1 into this, I get 1. If I plug in 0 for this, I get 0. If I plug in 1 for this, I get 1. So if I plot those 3 key points, and this is the part that's really important. So this point, and this point. If I know these 3 key points, and so, and here's the other thing I want to do with this. So I also want to notice just the relationship here. If I plot this point first, intuitively, to get this U shape, to get to the next points, I can go out 1, up 1 in each direction. So you can think of these 3 key points, think of how they relate to each other. I go out 1, up 1, and I have to make a U. So these are the connections that you want to make when you see these base graphs, and I have another video where I'm going to show you why. So this is all going somewhere. So for now, I have my 3 points, and I know that the shape of x squared, it makes a U-shaped parabola. Okay, cool, so there we go. Okay, so those are the 3 key points, all right? All right, so now let's move on to x cubed. Okay, so same 3 key points. This one has like a weird S shape, I guess, like, or I don't know, curved shape. How do you want to describe that? I mean, it's x cubed, but it has like this kind of curve. And okay, so it's the same 3 key points. So if I plug in -1, I get -1. If I plug in 0, I get 0. If I plug in 1, I get 1. All right, so if I plot these points, so the thing that you have to remember is, so these are the same 3 key points as a line, right? Like this is what we were just talking about. But the thing that you have to remember with these graphs is kind of what's that general shape? Because once you kind of know that general shape, if I start making changes to this function, the general shape isn't going to change. So that's kind of why this is important. Okay, so it's got this like I don't know. I always think of it as kind of like an S-ish curve. That's how I think of it. So remember the shape. And then for how do the 3 points kind of relate to one another? So I've got this one in the center. This is kind of my starting point. And then you go out 1, up 1 in this direction, out 1, down 1 in the other direction. So again, like this intuition here, I'm literally just creating my own intuition, but it helps me to remember so that I can graph this quickly. I can go boop, plot the 0, up here, down here, make my S shape. That's the way we want to think about this. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, square root of x. So square root of x has a domain issue. So mainly, if I were to plug in -1, so when we're talking about a graph, so I know like square root of -1 equals I, but when we're talking about a graph, I does not exist. So this just does not exist. So no, there are no negative numbers in the domain. The domain starts at 0. The square root of 0 is 0. And then the square root of 1 is 1. And I guess if you wanted to add another point, you could do like 4 and 2. I don't usually think of this because, again, I know what the general shape of this is. So for a square root, it has this type of shape, okay? So I start here at 0, 0, and then I come up here to 1, 1. So again, just notice how these 2 points kind of relate to one another. I go out 1, up 1. Commit kind of that plotting pattern to memory, and then there's the general shape that we want. Okay, so we start here, and then we can go this direction and keep going that way. Okay, so now cube root of x. Okay, so cube root of x has a shape like this, okay? And so the 3 key points you're going to want to remember are -1, the cube root of -1 is -1, the cube root of 0 is 0, and then the cube root of 1 is 1. So very similar to x cubed, right? But the key is that I know what this shape looks like. And if you're saying I didn't know that, that's okay. You're learning it now. Like if you're like, oh, I never learned this in a class before, I'm telling you kind of what some of the key graphs that you need to know as you move up in math. So you want to just kind of try to remember this is the shape of a cube root function. These are kind of the 3 points to help mark you and get you started. Again, I'm here at 0. You can see kind of how these 3 points relate to one another. All right. And it's got, that I guess looks more like an S shape than the other one. However you want to think about this is up to you, but you're trying to remember like what is this general shape of each graph. And like I said, this is all going somewhere really in the next video that we're going to talk about. So these are just kind of the foundations before we move on to the next thing. The last graph, absolute value, that makes a V shape. And so my points now, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1. These are the same points as a parabola, but I know because it's an absolute value, I know it's going to have a V shape. So I can say that 0, 0 is my starting point. I go out 1 and up 1 in each direction. And okay, so I know absolute value makes a V, so there you go. Okay, so just to review, to make this really, really clear, for these graphs, the thing that you want to remember what's that general shape. So x squared usually has like this parabola U shape. And then you kind of want to remember how 3 of the key points of the major points kind of relate to one another. So I've got these 3 points here. If I have these 3 and I know the general shape, I can really quickly draw this. That's kind of your goal, is to know how to kind of quickly draw this and have this level of intuition. X cubed, I said it was an S, it's really not an S, it's this curved shape. So it follows this kind of pattern. We could start here at 0, 0 and then kind of draw the other 2 points, and then I just know now what x cubed looks like. Square root of x, I start here, mark my next point, I've got this like half graph, and then cube root of x, so these 3 points, however, now it's going this direction, and then absolute value makes this V. Okay, so you want to just remember the shapes right now, and then we're going to go into another video where I'm going to talk about now how to kind of turn up the level with the graphing. So I will see you guys in the next video. I'll drop a link to it in the description if you want to watch it that way.